Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it, you already know. Like a motherfucking smack addict. Buy up, buy up. And in Menudo style in direct fashion, we're going to get straight to the content of the day. But before we do, let's hit the like and subscribe button. Ding. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I'm kicking. And I appreciate all the support. I'm very humbled by it. Thank you guys so much. So Dubs did a video yesterday, and make sure you guys tap into it. It was called The Only Norteno Dubs Ever Hated or Disliked, right? And, you know, me and Dubs, we got a good friendship, man. Me being from Northern California, him being from Southern California, who would have ever thunk it, right? I wouldn't have, definitely. But to tell you the truth, man, I always got along with Southerners and Southsiders ever since I was young and I was placed in the youth authority around them. You know, I understood that they were striving for their cause like I was striving for mine, and it was all business, nothing personal. Now, I will be doing a video on my other channel detailing a situation that got a little personal, right? And I will be doing a video pretty soon. There was two Southerners that I actually hated with a passion, man, and they hated me, and we'll be getting into all of that, right? And the reasons behind that, and it had nothing to do with North and South. It had more to do so with the person themselves, right? But Dubs did this video, and I know exactly who he was talking about. And to tell you the truth, this man was murdered in DVI Tracy prison years later after I met him and after I did time with them. And I can tell you right now, I seen it coming a mile. I seen it coming 14 miles away, right? It was definitely a situation that was on the horizon. You know, there was no avoiding it. The way this man spoke, the way this man acted, the way he conducted himself was unlike any other Norteno I've ever seen in my life or been around. This guy was out there. Wasn't a J-Cat, wasn't none of that. Was just a super gangbanger, a super Norteno, and he just disrespected the other side a little too much, and up to the point where it got him in trouble because he wouldn't listen. You know, he was untrainable. He was most people would say, okay, well, this man had a mind of his own. He spoke how he felt. I respect that. But at the end of the day, man, when you're a gang member and you're in prison or the youth authority, you know, you're going to conduct yourself just like every other homie. You're going to follow those rules and those regulations and those politics, or you're going to get politicked on. And eventually it did happen to him. So anyways, the guy that Dubs was talking about is from a town called Turlock, right? Turlock is right next to Modesto. It's in between Modesto and Merced or Livingston, all that. There's other little cities, but if you're talking about the bigger towns in the Central Valley in the 209, you're going to talk about Modesto and Merced, right? Stockton, of course, as well. And Turlock's a smaller town. And I have a lot of family from Turlock. You know, a lot of family from Barrio Turlock North, a lot of family from Mighty High Street, old school West Side Turlock. And, you know, that town is known for Norteno activity as well as meth, right? There's a lot of dope there. There always has been. Well, my grandmother used to live in Turlock for a lot of years, so I met a lot of the guys from the West Side. You know, every summer I used to go to my grandmother's house when I was younger, and my tios from Turlock would have, you know, all their homeboys around. So I got to know these guys pretty extensively. Guys like Jedi and Yo-Yo and Green Eyes and Spider and Crazy Boy. And these guys right here were the heart of Turlock Nortenos. You know, they held their own, and being very close to Modesto, you know, they had to be about the business, because Modesto and Turlock, there was a time when they really didn't see eye to eye. And Modesto, you know, their shit didn't stink when it came to Turlock. And so Vatos from Turlock would get into it. That's back when there was red on red, Nortenos against each other. You would see it a lot, Turlock versus Modesto. Now, me and my homeboys, as we got older, we would go to Turlock. And I remember I used to hate it because there was always a lot of parties out there in Denair and the outskirts of Turlock. And I used to tell the homies, like, man, I can't be out here, bro. I'm related to the whole town. I got so many primas because my family's so big. I got a tia that had 21 kids. I have another tia that had 19. Just thinking about that many kids made a motherfucking choke, right? So it was like I'm related to everybody, or I knew everybody, right? So Turlock was like a no-go for me, but I used to slide through with the homies to party, and it was what it was. Now, in order to tell this story about this guy from Turlock, I'm going to tell you who he is. Now, Dubs didn't mention his name yesterday out of respect. You know, Dubs just didn't want to throw his name on blast, but I did time with him. I know him well. Rest in peace to this individual. But the guy's name was Little Man from Turlock. He was actually a white Norteno, Gary Smith, right? And very well known. A lot of people know exactly who I'm talking about. And they know exactly the story that Dubs told was absolutely true. If they know him, they knew his character, right? So the first time I ran into him was in Nellis. I was locked up in Southern California, Nellis, in the youth authority. And we were in the caja, the box, the hole, right? And this was probably the most ran down place I've ever been besides Tamarack and Preston. That hole was no joke as well, right? The rack. But the box was pretty notorious for being one of the most dirtiest, grimiest places. I mean, there was taggings all over the walls. And I remember distinctly, man, like if you went into, I'm surprised they never saved the walls from inside the cells and put them as a museum piece, because every body you could think of in Southern California was tagged up. Every hood, Crips, Bloods, everything was tagged up on these walls. Pencil, pen, carvings. I mean, it was crazy. It was just graffiti everywhere, right? And this is where we slept. It was dirty. It smelled. The windows were open. There was a mesh screen, so cold air. It'd be cold in the winter and hot in the summer. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was so cold in these cells, we had to rip open our beds. Our beds were, they had all this cotton in them, and they were like a plastic liner, and you would actually cut your bed open and sleep inside your bed with your blanket to stay warm. It'd be itchy, but warm, right? It was just inhumane, some of the things that we went through. But I remember going in this cell, and there was a 14 carved into the wall about 4 inches deep. And it said little man, Turloco. And it was a big old 14. I mean, probably bigger than, probably about 3 foot, 4 foot, 1-4. And it was carved so deep into the wall. I said, man, whoever did this had to have been here for a while. Now, I was under the assumption that we were the second busload of Nortenos ever in Nellis, right? But I had never really asked the homies who was all on that first busload. Well, little man from Turlock had rolled up on that first busload, and he had went to the school area and he had stabbed 2 Southsiders, right? And this guy, because he had that on his resume, to the day he died, that was all he ever talked about. And Dubs was in Pelican Bay with them and heard those stories on the Tira, right? And this guy talked about that shit over and over again, and that's it. That was his claim to fame. He had did a stabbing in the school area. He hit a couple of dudes, barely hit him, didn't kill him, didn't even send him to the infirmary, just scratched him. And he thought he was God's gift to the Norteno cause, right? Which is cool, man. You handle your business. He went down south. He did what he was supposed to do. But enough is enough, homie. You handled your business. Cool. Keep it pushing. So I see it, and I'm like, damn, who's little man? Because I haven't ran into him on the main line in the compas. I hadn't heard about him. So what had happened was they had this control office. So it was an L shape, this building. One side was the caja, the box, the hole. The other side was called TAF. The TAF side was kind of a lockdown situation. If you caught a stabbing, if you were doing a lot of time, you were going to be on that side for sure, right? And he was on that side. So that's why I'd never ran into him. He had done this stabbing prior to us getting there. I came on the second busload. So one day they come to my cell, and this is my first time in the hole. What had happened was, and I've told the story before, when the Norteños pulled up, when we pulled up, right? We had a riot that night. We got down in the dorm, and they shipped a lot of the Southsiders. They put them right on the bus that we came on. They shipped them to Preston, Carholton, wherever. The next day, it was the next morning, we went to breakfast. We went on the line movement to breakfast, and all the Southsiders were off the compas. A lot of them had got took because they were involved in the riot. The other ones were working the kitchen area, right? And so when we went into the kitchen, we were having pancakes that day, and we were starving like Marvin. We hadn't ate, since we were on the bus the day before. We got there too late for dinner. They just said, fuck dinner. You guys are suffering. So we were hungry. And as we were coming in, I had this bright idea that these guys were spitting in our food. I was right. Okay, I could hear it literally happening. And we're the only brown men sticking our hands through the windows. So you see a brown man, there you go, right? They dick our shit up. So as we sit down in this chow hall, I tell all the homies, all the Northerners, hey, bro, don't eat that shit. They spit in it. And even though I'm hungry as hell and I'm a youngster, still, I had the resolve in my mind that I ain't going to eat this shit. And so the homies are like, what? For reals? I said, just don't eat it, bro. So we're starving, right? But we don't got no canteen, nothing. We came from reception. We push our trays out. A guy named Joker from Lamparas, from Longpark, right? He comes. He's washing the tables. He sees it. He's like, eat your pancakes, esse, right? I said, you eat them, fool, right? He's like, and I was like, I'll see you back at the compa. He's like, all right, you'll see me. I should have took flight right there, but I'm like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's at work. Don't fuck with a man when he's working, right? So anyways, I slide back to the building, and I tell the homeboys, I'm going to get off. they're like, yeah, no, it ain't that serious. It is. To me, it is that serious, right? Plus, I was trying to catch my ticket back up north, so it was what it was. He comes through the door after work. I get off right then and there. We fight, whatever. I go to the hole. Okay, this is my first time in the box. I've been in there about 2 days when the cops come to my door to open the cell. They hand me a sack lunch. They handcuff me. They hand me the sack lunch. Then they grab it back, handcuff me, and take me to this little day room area. It was a small little room. And there's a white dude sitting. He's bald. He looks like he's trying to grow a Mongolian. He's very skinny, right? Ugly as sin, right? And he's sitting there. And I don't know if this is a skinhead or I don't know what he is and why he's there. But I'm thinking, hey, it's about to be a kickboxing match because we're actually handcuffed, right? So then as me and him are sitting there, the cops come and they unhandcuff me. And I'm like, I'm going to take flight, but I'm not an asshole. I'm going to wait till he's unhandcuffed so we can get it. And they unhandcuff him. He jumps up real quick. He's like, where you from, homie? I said, Northern. Where you from? He said, I'm from Turlock, Northern, little man. We shake hands, saludos, whatever. And he has a bag full of oranges. And they handed me my bag, my sack lunch. And he has just a bag full of oranges. He tells me, yeah, these cops give me whatever I want. They know what time it is. If not, I'll take flight. This. And he starts talking that high power shit. And just the way he's talking, I'm captivated because he's so comfortable in his skin. He's so comfortable where he's at. And I'm not. I'm like, fuck that, bro. If any of these fools come through, I'm trying to get mine, right? I'm aware. Like, I'm not worried. I'm aware. And he's like, man, fuck these fools, bro. I stabbed 2 dudes in the school area. These fools didn't retaliate. Ooh, you know what I mean? I'm going to go to prison. All this shit he's talking. And I got this vibe from him, like, okay. And he just kept on talking about disrespecting Southsiders. And I wasn't into that. I wasn't into disrespecting the opposition when they're not present, you know? Like, hey, I ain't going to lie. It's locker room talk. The homies would be like, yeah, fuck them cats or whatever. Because they were saying the same thing. But it wasn't like, all right, enough's enough, bro. Let's eat our lunch and just chill. We got an hour in the day room. And so he's telling me all these stories about Turlock. We're talking about people that we mutually know. And I just caught a bad vibe from him. Like, this guy was like, I don't know, like he had bipolar. He was up and down. And all he talked about was stabbing people. And he's going to do this. And he's going to do that. And I had never heard of him. And, oh, I'm well known in the youth authority system, whatever. So that was the only time I got to see him then, right? So he's telling me he's on the tap side. That's why he's not on the box side, whatever. I go do my whole time. I get out. They never take me to the day room again with him. They interchanged it. So I was with other homeboys. So I'm with the homeboy from Sanho the next time. And he was like, hey, did you run into that little man? I said, who's that, bro? He didn't come on the bus with us. He came on the bus with the homies. He said, I guess so, bro. I don't know. He's a J-Cat, huh? I said, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's a little different. He's a little out there, right? Whatever. That was the conversation. So I end up going to Preston. Years later, I do my years in Nellis. I go to Preston, and there was a homeboy there from Turlock, Droopy. And I'm like, hey, bro, I was locked up with your homeboy in Nellis, bro. And he's like, who? I said, little man. He said, right? He said, Gaga. And I said, why? He said, that fool's a J-Cat, fool. He said, that fool's wild. Well, he's over there trying to stab everyone, huh? I said, yeah. He said, oh, he's known for that, bro, but he ain't like that, bro. He's really just scared. And I said, well, I don't know, bro, but, I ain't got nothing bad to say about him other than he was a little wild. But our interaction was cool. I mean, he didn't act stupid to me. He just told the story 100 times while we're in an hour. He told that story at least 100 times, right? So anyways, years later, I go to prison. And I run into some homeboys from Turlock, Modesto, and his name gets mentioned. And everybody who had any interaction with this guy disliked him, right? It was always, that fool ain't all that. That fool ain't this. That fool ain't that. Yet he was putting in his work. He was doing his thing. He obviously was doing enough to get him validated and put in the shoe, right? In Pelican Bay. He achieved that. And I'm not gonna lie, nobody ever wanted to go to the shoe, but it was like a brownie point. It was a badge of honor if you did make it. And so that's where Dubs comes into play. Dubs was in the building with them. And this guy used to run his neck. Now, one thing about the Pelican Bay shoe that I've heard, I've never been to the shoe in Pelican Bay, right? But it's quiet as a church house mouse in there. You can hear a pin drop. It's very respectful on that tier. And if it isn't, then it's going to get ugly. And for this guy to be on the tier talking shit about the opposition, that's crazy. That's putting the Nortenos in a situation, something that they never did. We were known back in the days for being very militant, being very respectful to everyone, and being ready for the doors to crack. We were trained that way. There was no time to bump baking soda breath on the door. It was always time to go. It was go time or it wasn't. And for this guy to be disrespecting, it showed the true nature of his character. Now, years pass. I get out of prison, right? after talking about little man, and I never ran into him in the system again. But I go to Turlock. I'm at a party. My primas are all there, and there's some homies there, and we're in the backyard, and everyone's smoking and drinking and kicking it, and we're telling stories. And I was like, "Hey, you guys know little man from Turlock?" And every one of them knew him, and every one of them hated him. And I said, "Why does this guy get so much hate?" And it was because of the way he acted. He was more Wes Watsonish. He had this persona about him, like he was just God's gift to the North. Like he was that one, right? When in all reality, I was talking to a homeboy that did a lot of time with them on the linea, on GP, and he said that fool never put in no work like that. That fool just, his claim to fame was he stabbed a couple Southerners in the youth authority. And I said, that's funny because I was there and that happened previously to me getting there, and them vatos didn't even go to the infirmary. It was nothing. Like I got stabbed worse by bulldogs and by Northerners, right? True stories. I said, but it was what it was. So years later, I'm in Tracy prison. Okay. And there's an incident that happens on a different building. And they're like, "Hey, did you hear what happened? A homeboy got killed today." You know? And I was like, "Serio? Like, who was it?" It was definitely not the Southsiders, because on general population and reception in Tracy, the Southerners and Northerners were kept separated. There was never no action of seeing them. There was never no action of them seeing us. They were kept, at this time, I think they were in East Hall or West Hall. We were on H wing at the time. They got J wing, H wing, E. They got all these different wings, right? And then there's the main line, which is like X dorm, Z dorm, and then they got the K wing, which is the whole. And they had East Hall, West Hall, and they kept all the Southsiders. I think it was on either East or West Hall at the time. They switch it around all the time. Or now Tracy's shut down, but that's how they did it. I think they were on West Hall, and so you never ran into them. So I said, well, it couldn't have been the Southerners. Was it the whites? Because 9 times out of 10, if a Norteno was killed in Tracy, it was due to Northern and white conflict. And we weren't in a lockdown situation, so it wasn't a situation where we were at war with them. Like we were always on a half 60 with the whites in Tracy, but it wasn't that correct. You know, it wasn't like nothing was popping. I would have known, you know, I would have been ready. And they were like, "Nah, the homeboys removed them." And I was like, "Damn, who was it?" And I was in a position to ask these questions. They were like, "It was little man from Turlock." And I was like, "Gary Smith, the white dude?" They were like, "Yeah." And I was like, I seen it coming. Well, let me explain to you why and how it went down. For those that have always asked about him, this is exactly what went down. And this was on the Wheelock. So he got pulled somewhere along the line. He was able to talk himself into a position of being a Norteno, right? There's a difference between a Northerner and a Norteno, and I'm not going to get into all that, but he had status. So he got there, and because of his attitude, like a lot of people didn't like him because he woofed. He talked shit. And he didn't only talk shit to Southerners, but he talked shit to other Northerners. Like he was that type of person. You can't do that, right? You can never downplay your people or woof on your people. That's considered a red on red, right? That's considered being a bully. And because he had status, he tried to get into some lightweight politicking on the person that was there that had control of that building, right? And he kind of just put himself in his position. Now, here's the thing. In Tracy with the Nortenos, this is how it was. It was such a big turnaround. There was people coming in and out, violations, people catching terms, that some guys would be there for 6 months. Some guys would be there for a month, 3 months. It just depended, right? So to be in the COC, the chain of command, it would always switched over. There was always new people coming. So the vato that had the block, you know, or had the building was basically the llavero, or, you know, running the show. He wouldn't be there in a couple months usually. He'd be gone. But this homeboy, you know, was a lifer, and he was looking at going to a level 4 180. So when you're going to a level 4 180, there's not a lot of bed space, so you stay in reception longer, you know, and then they eventually send you to the prison. You stay in the hole for for a little while before they send you to your building. So it takes a while because you got to understand 180 level 4s, people ain't paroling. They're dying. You got to wait for someone to die to get a bed, right? So little man gets there and he gets into some politicking with this guy. And because of something that he had done while he was in Pelican Bay, it came up. That's the thing, man. When you go to places and you start trying to politic and you try to play, everything that you've ever done in the system is going to come up. Someone's going to know you, right? And I didn't even know he was in Tracy at the time, because our buildings, we had not went out to yard yet. We were just coming off a lockdown situation of a murder that had happened with the whites. And this was going to be our first yard, so I didn't really know what homeboys were there. You know, I had the roster of who was there in our building, but I didn't know who was in the whole prison. Or I might have missed it if I seen it. And what happened was he got into it, and because of something he did in Pelican Bay that I'm not going to speak on, it was brought to light. and they stabbed him repeatedly on the tier. He was killed by his own cause because he didn't play the game right. You know, and I know a lot of people say, well, you know, shout out to Little Man and respects, man. Like I said, I met him in real life. He was a character, no doubt about it. And I could understand and see why Dubs disliked him. You know, when you come from doing a lot of time in the hole, doing time in shoes, then you know that, you know, even if it's your enemy, you look out for each other. You treat each other with respect. It's just the way the raza does it, right? We prided ourselves on respect in prison. That was all you had, your word, respect, and your fucking pictures and a little bit of canteen, right? And all that shit you treasured. So for someone to actually be bumping baking soda breath in that type of setting, it was only a matter of time before he got done by his own people. And that's exactly what happened to Little Man. Now, I have nothing bad to say about him as far as, did I dislike him? No, I thought he was a little wild. He was a little out there. But again, I agree with him going to Nellis and doing what he had to do. I remember when I first pulled up, you know, all the homeboys were talking about catching a body. The Southerners were talking about catching a body because that was our only ticket to go back up north. But in all reality, you know, even if you stabbed someone and did that, didn't mean you went up north. It meant they gave you a new you got a prison term and then they shipped you to prison. You know, it was really you stab someone, they're going to get tired of you and ship you up north. That's not the way it worked, especially for us. With Southerners, they used that as a bargaining chip. If the Southerners got into the mix with Nortenos, they would ship them up north because they would take them away from their families and from their homies. With us, they're not going to put us in a position to go back with our people. They already got us where they wanted us. They're just going to make it worse for us and give us more time and sit our ass there. So I don't know what he was thinking, but I recognize what he contributed to the cause. But at the end of the day, what did he do? He scratched 2 people and then got murdered for bragging about it. So I understand where Dubs is coming from. Dubs did know him. We've talked about him in the past. Dubs didn't want to mention his name, but I'll tell you, man, Little Man from Turlock, he was a real one. And being real, like Wes Watson, right? Being too real got him killed. That's the truth. So with that being said, that's the video of the day, man. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle for what I truly believe in. And that's the betterment of all people, man. Dubs told a real story. That dude used to woof. He used to talk shit, man. I could hear him when I was in the hole on the other side of Taft screaming. He used to always argue with Smokey from Grape Street, from Watts Vaudeville Grape. It was a trip. Them two used to go at it. The gun. Bang, bang.